Well, I was hoping Marv wouldn't call me on that, but I should have known better. It's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Congressman Adam Kinzinger from the state of Illinois. The Congressman serves as representative for the 16th Congressional District of Illinois and is a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Of note, the Congressman's district plays host to 4 nuclear power plants, which I think have a total of 8 units. So really an extraordinarily valuable perspective for us to hear today. So without further ado, Congressman Kinzinger.
Dude, I'm scared to death now that he's going to come up and give me the hook, too. Yeah, I know, right? It's good to be over in the Taj Mahal in the Senate side, so the buildings over here are just way better than ours. I mean, it's like 80 elevators, and we're on the 9th floor. Anyway, whatever. No, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm not going to speak a long time because you guys have, very important panels. I just want to briefly touch on, as was alluded to, the impact that nuclear has in my district, and I think the impact that nuclear has on national security. It's not an issue we talk about a lot. We talk, more the economics of it or the carbon side of it, but I think it's important to note. So in my district, as was mentioned, I have 4 plants, 8 reactors. It's the most of any district in the nation. Employs 3,500 people, and an average impact of $9 billion to the economy in Illinois. You think about it, Illinois gets 48% of its energy from nuclear. It's one of the highest states in the nation for that. And of course, you know that nuclear plays just a huge role around the nation. But when you go to, for instance, one of the communities in my district, and you go and see their schools, and you go and see the different programs that they have, not putting down any other schools, but you see that there is a tax base that's obviously being able to be invested in the infrastructure of the next generation, that infrastructure being our children. Beyond that, when you have 3,500 employees in your district, many of them with engineering degrees, obviously very high-paid jobs, what you see is then an interest and an investment in that next generation where they think about things like, hey, my dad's a nuclear engineer, my mom's a nuclear engineer, maybe I can pursue that career field. And so the impact on my district is significant. The impact of these plants closing in my district would likewise be very significant. I think that's important to keep in mind. By the way, I think like 10 miles from my house is the original GE plant where they were actually experimenting with the idea of nuclear reprocessing in the 60s. That serves now as spent fuel storage, but it's kind of neat to go see. And I think that's a discussion that we ought to have long term in terms of reprocessing. So the impact on my district's big. The impact on Illinois, as Marv mentioned, Illinois is in the middle of a huge budget battle right now. I don't think we've had a budget for like 2 years or something like that. Actually, side note, the good thing about Springfield is it makes D.C. look highly functional. So it's actually kind of worked to my advantage a little bit. But as I mentioned, we get half of our power from nuclear. So you think about 90% of the carbon-free type of power that we have is a result of nuclear. So now as this clean power plan comes out and if the courts allow it to go and we end up, having these requirements, shutting down nuclear power plants in Illinois puts us in a position where I don't know if we could ever achieve what's put out in front of us. That's a significant issue too. I mean, there's multiple prongs to this. Now we know that the economics of building new plants aren't the best right now. But we know that as we want to achieve, a carbon neutral future, as we want to achieve these kind of jobs and employment, keeping the current infrastructure in place is step one. One of the things a lot of people don't think about, I'm sure you all have, is not just, is it a zero-sum game on power? Something carbon neutral comes into place, we're offsetting carbon somewhere else. The fact is the population is growing exponentially, so the need for energy in general is growing. So all of this has to play a huge role, as you all understand. The other issue, too, is just the simple ability to provide baseload power, not reliant on what's going on with the weather, not reliant necessarily on how hard the wind's blowing or if the sun's shining. Those are all good things. But the ability to have that baseload power in times of national emergency and things like that is also something that I don't think gets enough impact. But the other thing I want to say is this, the impact on national security. So on top of having these 4 plants and everything else, We have a huge industrial base in Rockford, Illinois, and around that actually make parts for nuclear power plants. That employs people, too. That's very important. But the United States is still the global leader in nuclear. And when we're the global leader in nuclear, we get to write the rules. We get to write the rules on proliferation. We get to write the rules on technologies, things along that line. We have been ceding our leadership lately, however, to the Russians. They're building 40% of new nuclear power plants around the world. I got to tell you, I don't think the Russians have the same kind of concern with nuclear proliferation that the United States does. I'm not impugning them. I'm not saying they want to spread nuclear technology. My point is, if we want to write the rules, we have to maintain the leadership in that. So I think it's important. And lastly on that is the issue of a brain drain. You know, if we lose our technological edge in terms of nuclear power plants, in terms of the global security side of it, obviously we will not be educating that next generation to do this kind of work. And then when we find ourselves in a situation which we very well may in 10, 20, 30 years where we need that, we'll find out that education and that brain base is gone. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the direct impacts. I know you guys are here to talk about how to maintain, how to keep them going, what needs to be done. I just want to say thank you because that's very important for people that live in my district, for people that, you know, want to get their paycheck, that want to provide for their family. And so on our side, you know, look, what can we do? Let's try to find ways to, and we've worked with the Secretary and his staff, by the way, have been very good working with us. I want to compliment him on ways to make it easier to streamline regulations, to give nuclear power plants, to give companies an idea of what to expect, of how to move forward. And another good point, think about the fact that I think the Japanese are actually looking to the NRC right now for leadership in terms of how they want to proceed on some of their issues. So, again, I just appreciate the opportunity to come out and say hello to you. I just wanted to put a face on the fact that there are people that appreciate your thoughts, that appreciate your discussion, and really are hoping for strong action out of state and federal government to ensure they can keep their jobs. So with that, I want to say thank you. God bless you all. Have a great weekend.